humbug. Hi, I'm Jerry Parisi. Welcome tonight to the second season of the Filmmakers Show. And I was almost going to say the New York Filmmakers Show, but I really can't pigeonhole myself like that. But welcome to the Filmmakers Show. I have Michelle Parisi with me here tonight. I have an amazing guest. But before we begin that, I just want to point out I had a great experience today. I was down in Brooklyn at the Steiner Studios, which were huge. I have never seen studios so big because I never got a chance to be into them. And I got to say, the impression I got was nothing but super professional. From the moment we walked in, it was like Hollywood, and the buildings, the size of the ceilings, the incredible amount of wardrobe. I went to wardrobe and makeup today for a project I'm engaged in, which I'm very excited to be in. I'll tell you more about it as we go on. But I got to just say the massive size of these studios, which took up the old Brooklyn Navy Yard, or at least a piece of it, just blew me away. I counted nothing less than maybe 7 or 8 big things going on at once. And I will tell you, I'll keep you apprised as we go further with this project. But we've got a great show tonight. I got Michelle Parisi with me, who's officially my new co-host. And from the days of Here's to Us, I bring a lawyer with me that was truly one of our guiding sources that will talk tonight about intellectual property law, which you guys really need to know about. Her name is Betty Tuffiarello from Intellectual Law, and I welcome you, Michelle, and Betty. Welcome to the Filmmaker Show here on Madhousetv.
Thank you for having us.
Betty,
Glad to be here as usual.
I'm just blown away, and I know you're happy to be here. How do you feel about being officially my co-host now?
It's great. I really enjoy it.
You get a lot of perks from me now, right?
I suppose.
So, what's one of them?
Being on the show.
I thought about Dunkin' Donuts and buying you free lunch today. That was a nice perk.
Not so much.
Okay, fine. Betty, you're here with us, and you were just on Legal Straight Talk a little while ago, and I thought that was a brilliant show. You were really able to put things together. So I'm going to say, in my opinion, it's organization. We were talking about trademarks and things like that, but on our show, I'm going to come to you and say, hi, Betty, I got a movie. What do I do with it? So without any further ado, let's shed some light on what filmmakers really need to do to get their movie established and put out there legally, and of course, in a way that it's not going to get stolen, or however you're going to go. You tell us.
Well, in filmmaking, primarily with young filmmakers, they don't get involved so much with equipment, although that's questionable, and I put that in, with a big question mark there, but let's put it on the side. Usually, a young filmmaker putting out that 20-minute film that they're going to put in their portfolio. There are basically 2 areas of intellectual property law that they have to always keep in mind in the back of their heads as they're developing this particular project: trademarks and copyrights.
Okay.
Those are the 2 categories that are in some way involved in the area of film: trademarks and copyrights. And copyrights have many, many different levels. Because when you think about it, a film is really a derivative product. It is a derivative work that has multiple components in it. It has a script. It has the actual film. It has music. It has a musical score that, and forgive me if I'm not using the right terms.
No, all good.
But if I do, I'm not a filmmaker, so I'm kind of winging it here. So you have your music, you have your, maybe there are songs that are being performed, or songs that have actually been written for the film specifically. Well, those songs themselves will have to be dissected into their individual components, broken down into their individual components. The words, which is a poem, which is text, versus music. So for a filmmaker, copyrights involve so many different parts because the final work has so many different components to reach that final end.
And they have to protect all of their original stuff,
Yes.
as well as making sure that they're not infringing on somebody else's copyright. And a
Well-
young person might take somebody's music not realizing that they can't put it in their movie.
That's absolutely correct, except that in the case of copyrights, it's not so stringent. It's not as stringent, I should say, as, for example, a patent. That becomes a little bit more involved, because in copyrights, unlike patents, there's no requirement of novelty. So if you want to write a story about Romeo and Juliet and you want to place it in the 21st century, so long as you are the creator, the author, the originator of that story, and you didn't actively go out to copy somebody's work, then you have a copyright to your own work, and you don't have to worry about someone else's work being infringed upon. Now, that doesn't always work. For example, in the case of music.
Right, that's what I was
In the
referring
case
to.
of music, music is a little bit different than, for example, text or a script or a theme. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy, they fall in love, the parents hate each other, they die. I mean, that's
What a great movie.
That's a story that transcends culture. It
Right.
transcends peoples. It transcends nations. It's just the human existence.
Right.
But music is a little bit different because the science of music is different. You have a set number of notes. You have a set number of, pentagrams, I guess, or lines that you can place their notes. You have bass, you have alto, you have tenor, you have soprano, and when you're putting a score together, inadvertently, if through your consciousness, because of the internet, radio, TV, there might be a little tune that's kind of reverberating in your head from a song like Imagine Dragons, for example, who is so popular right now, and they are, their music is just all over the place and so familiar. A young musician may very well internalize that tune and not realize, as he's putting his own original music in, that he may actually be kind of transcending into that
So
world.
without even meaning to do it.
How many times, the first three notes play and you think it's, I don't know,
A different
Rush,
song,
and it
right.
turns out to be, Twisted Sister, because there's just that kind of overlap in music. For copyright infringement, the author, the owner of a work who he thinks has been infringed upon, he has to show that there was access to his work, that it was available to the world to see, to hear, to play with. And in the case of music, the burden on the copyright owner is to really show that the music is so widely dispersed out there into the world that new music people, new music composers who come along couldn't help but copy them because the music was so public and so available and so diffused into the environment that they couldn't help themselves but copy. Music is a very unique area, and in fact, when you talk to copyright attorneys, there are specialists who deal with music copyrights
And-
because of the nature of the beast.
Right, and then there's also, when it's public domain, that it's okay to use the music. So then that becomes...
That's so difficult because copyrights have such a long life. Copyrights
Scary.
are really, really, the life of copyrights is the life of the author plus 75. If the owner is a human being.
Wow.
If the owner of the copyright is a corporation, it's 90 years.
Wow.
So it's very difficult, especially since 1975-76, when the new copyright laws were implemented, and then 1991. Since then, up until 1975, we had the old copyright laws. And back then, if you didn't have a copyright notice on your work, it would fall into the public domain. It was 28 years, you could be renewed for another 28 years, and if you failed to have a copyright notice, too bad, falls into the public domain. That was changed. And the reason that was changed is because the US copyright laws had to be harmonized with the rest of the world. And so it's a situation where it's very difficult for works to fall in the copyright domain, into the public domain. Try copying a Beatles song.
Oh.
It's not going to happen. Try copying a Led Zeppelin song. It's not going to happen. I mean, it's just not going to happen because the life of the copyright is just so long. In the patent world, in the world of patents, the patent is only 20 years from the date of filing. So you have to realize by the time you file your patent application, by the time the patent issues, a few years have gone by. It's an average between 2 to 4 years, 2 to 5 years if it's in the regular course of business. And then you have maybe another 15 years after that in terms of life of a patent. Copyrights are a whole different bowl of wax. Totally different. So when you realize the life of the author, assuming we live to be 80, the average lifespan of a human being at this point, plus 75, well, good luck. That means 155 years are going to have to go by before the music falls into the public domain. On the other hand, if you want to use classical music, where classical music has in fact fallen in the public domain, and we're talking about the Beethoven and the Mozart, or even older than that, that has fallen into the public domain. If you go out and you copy something that's in the public domain that goes that far back, that's okay. What you can't do is you can't go and copy Beethoven's Fifth as it was performed by New York Philharmonic. Okay, so because as artists, we interpret things differently. You may work, let's say we both want to paint, to do a painting of a dog or a cat, and we really like the beach. So we're going to put the German Shepherd, let's say we pick a German Shepherd, we put it on the beach, and you have a backdrop of the beach. And you like to work with watercolors, and I like to work with acrylic, with oils. So now, and I'm a very aggressive human being, and you're very soft and very, peaceful, and you're looking for that peace in a human being, whereas I'm savage. So now, when I paint my German Shepherd with a backdrop, that painting is going to have a totally different artistic impression than yours. Well, copyright protects that artistic impression, my artistic impression. Yours is you have your copyright to your artistic impression. I have it to mine. I can't copy yours. You can't copy mine. And nobody else can copy either one of us. But if they want to go out and do a German Shepherd on a backdrop of an ocean, they can go ahead and do their own.
Right.
That's what copyright is all about. It's the artistic impression. And of course, nothing says artistic impression more than a film. The problem is, well, not problem, but what most people should understand and need to understand is that usually a film has so many different components. Even the performance of the actors, okay? I may interpret Shakespeare far, far differently from yours, from your interpretation, from the way you interpret. But if we're both directed by someone who has a vision, now our performance is going to reflect that vision. So now who does the copyright belong to? Does it belong to me? Because performance is a separate copyright. Does it belong to you, or does it belong to the director? So that's why we have contracts. Because the contract says, if I'm going to hire you, and you're going to work for me, and you're going to act, and you're going to give an interpretation that is consistent with my vision, I own the copyright because we both agreed to that in a contract. Without a contract, it would be a zoo. That's one of the reasons why filmmaking has so many contracts, and there are entertainment attorneys who specialize exclusively on how to put these contracts together. Very, very important.
Wow.
So these,
It seems like that the simplest project that a young person is doing, they really need the guidance of someone who really knows how to protect them, because they could very innocently get themselves in some sort of hot water.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, it's very interesting, both views here, especially with the paintings. I understand that with the art background and what you mean by that. But to break it down, so I come to you and I say, I've got a script right here, and it's the greatest script in the world, and I wrote it, let's say, by myself. Let's start with that first. I wrote it all by myself, and I don't want anybody to steal it before I turn around and commit it to actors who are going to then do their performance on screen. Or shop it. However it might be. For those of you in the audience who are not filmmaking world, shop it means to sell it off. Okay, now, having said that, I've got this script in my hand. It's beautifully done. It's got a lot of pages in it, 150, 200 pages. We're all set. I bring it to you. First steps.
file the copyright. It is so inexpensive and it's so easy. Please, please go get a copyright certificate for it. It's, if you do it electronically, right now, I don't remember exactly, but it used to be when we used to submit the copyright applications in writing, it was $50. I think it's less now. You file the copyright. You need to get a copyright certificate because that gives you the official government stamp that you are, in fact, the original author of that script. That you are, in fact, the person who wrote it, who created it, who sweated over it, who created what is in there. The best thing that you can do is file the copyright. And the reason for this is because if you don't, and somebody steals that script from you, either while you're shopping it, or you forgot it and you left it at, the Starbucks that you went to get a cup of coffee and you just left it behind. These things happen. Somebody picks it up and runs with it because it's the next best script that was ever created. If you have a copyright certificate, you have the passport to get into a courthouse, a federal courthouse nonetheless. It cannot be litigated in state court. It gives you that the passport, the key to the courthouse, whatever you want to call it, to allow you to go in and get an injunction to prevent whoever stole that script from you, to prevent them from using it and taking it away from you.
So I got a question here. So this is the script, but you can't really copyright the idea if there's no words behind it.
That is correct.
So if I had an idea about a horse drinking water out of the beach, which was going to be a wonderful movie, and someone else saw it and said, I have an idea. I'm going to have a horse drinking out of a trough. And then someone goes over and says, well, you're stealing my idea. It's like, no, not really. My horse is drinking from a trough. Yours is drinking from the beach. There is no protection against that.
Ideas cannot be protected under any type of intellectual property.
Okay. So it's
no
the
ideas
script,
are protected.
the words.
Yes.
That's it.
The minute you take an idea and you reduce it to a tangible medium where now people can see it, feel it, read it, experience it, and that tangible medium can be paper, it could be a disc on a computer, a USB, whatever it is, it has to be reduced to a tangible medium. Once you do that, now the copyright attached. That means there's a copyright. Even without registering it, the copyright attached to the work at the moment that you actually took that idea and reduced it to a tangible medium. And I'm using language that is actually written into the statute, into the law that controls copyrights, which is Title 17 of the United States Code. So the minute that idea is fixed, it is expressed in a tangible medium, the copyright has attached. Now, how do you enforce that copyright?
That's a very good question.
Now, to enforce that copyright, you need a registration. Okay? You cannot enforce a copyright until you actually get a certificate of registration. And you don't need to get a lawyer to do that. It is so simple. You just go to the Copyright Office, and if you don't remember that the domain name, and I never do, all I do is I go to any of the search engines available on the internet, whether it's Google or Yahoo or MSN.com. You go to the search engine, you just type in U.S. Copyright Office. That's it. Or Copyright Office, or just copyright, the word copyright, and it will immediately pull up the website to the United States Copyright Office. And you can just visit the website and follow the instructions, pay your fee, and file your copyright. It is so simple and it's so inexpensive. It breaks my heart every time I have someone who comes to me and says they copied my work. You need to stop them, and I can't stop them because I don't have a copyright certificate.
But it's only the script, not the concept that they can copy.
That is correct.
So now I got my script. I just got from the U.S. the Copyright Office. I got my script. So it says the horse drank the water with a TM, an R, or a C.
Neither.
Aha, go ahead.
Neither. Usually, here's the thing. You don't need to get the certificate from the Copyright Office to begin promoting your script or shopping it or looking to bring it to the next level.
Right.
The minute you file that application, you're pretty much protected.
Okay. Do you not put the year or anything down there?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
Now, once you get the certificate back,
Got the certificate.
now you got the certificate. Now you can actually put down copyright, which is the C with the circle
C with the
and
circle.
the year. Now, some of my clients don't wait for the certificate. Okay. I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong. I never really thought about it at this point. Now that we're talking, I'm actually going to go home and research it. But I do know that there is no longer a requirement of notice in order for the copyright to be enforceable. It used to be, like I said to you, if you didn't have a copyright notice, it would fall in the public domain. That's no longer the case. But putting copyright as of the date that it's attached is something that a lot of people do. So if you create a website, for example, right?
Right.
Your film is ready to go, you're promoting it, you start running those trailers, and after the trailers it says for more information go to, and there's your website for the film. When you land there, usually right at the bottom it says copyright New York or copyright USA 1997 or whatever the year it is, 2015. The film is promoted in 2015. The film was completed in 2015, so there's nothing wrong with that. The copyright attached at the moment of completion, so you can probably be able to put the notice even before the certificate of registration. It's something that I have not thought about, and I'm actually a little embarrassed about the fact that I haven't thought about it. But everybody does it, and that's okay, because I would argue that copyright notice should in fact be from that moment when the copyright attached.
Sure.
The only value of the certificate of registration of a copyright with the Copyright Office, think of it as the carrot and the stick. The stick is you need that certificate if you want to stop somebody from infringing on your copyright. If you want to be able to go into a courthouse and seek help from the court in stopping someone from infringing on your copyright, you must have the certificate of registration of the copyright. No registration certificate, you ain't getting squat. The court will throw you out. The defendants will make a motion to dismiss for lack of standing. Judge, they cannot be here. They cannot receive the relief that they're looking for because they don't have a certificate of registration. Now you come back and you say, but Judge, I filed an application. The judge will say, when did you file it? Oh, I filed it a month ago. Did you file it expedited? Sure, Judge, I filed it expedited. When do you expect it to happen? It's going to be here in 3 weeks. Okay, motion stayed until you get the certificate.
Wow.
Now, it used to be that judges had no patience for us. If you didn't have that certificate, they would throw you out until you get the certificate and have you refile the entire lawsuit all over again. That's the stick. Now, what's the carrot? Right? A certificate of registration is a carrot and a stick. There's something called statutory damages.
Oh boy.
Okay?
But I'm going to ask you to hang on to that one
Okay.
second. All right. We've come to the end of this episode of the Filmmaker Show here in Madhouse TV. And if you're watching Channel 20. So my little stick is this. Stick around. There's another show directly after this if you're watching us on Madhouse TV. Betty will be back and she'll bring to light more of this information, which is very valuable for filmmakers. If you're watching us on Channel 20, we'll see you next week and that same episode will air. So on behalf of myself for the second season of the Filmmaker Show, Michelle Parisi, and our guest, Betty Tuffiorello, we'll see you in just about a few minutes. Hi, I'm Jerry Parisi. Welcome to the Filmmakers Show here on Madhousetv. Really interesting guest. I'm going to go right into it because it's such a deep level. Betty Tuffiorello, intellectual property law. She is really trying to get out there some of this information about what you do when you have a script or a logo or anything it is that's got to do with your intellectual property. In our case, a TV show or a movie or some of the different things that we need to do before we go out and market or even give out our scripts. Betty, welcome back. So we were just talking on the last show about the copyright and the law and the script, and now we've got this, which is the derivative of that, and you came up with several.
And I was going to ask the question that what constitutes infringing on someone's copyright, because a person can take someone's script and change things about it. At what point is it obvious that they've stolen it?
That is such a good question. But before I get into it, when we stopped the last show, we kind of were like the carrot and the stick, and you told me to hold on to that thought.
That's a good.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the carrot and the stick.
So, do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, because they're hanging onto their TVs or computers like this, waiting.
Because we were talking about the stick, right?
Even Bugs Bunny's waiting to find out what's going on with the carrot. So go ahead.
So I said, now the carrot, and you said, hold on to that thought.
Oh, that carrot.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the carrot, because we were talking about statutory damages.
Statutory damages. Okay.
Here's what I need you to understand. Unlike other areas of the law, other areas, intellectual property law areas, where patents and trademarks, one of the things that a lot of plaintiffs think about when they want to sue someone is damages, right? What am I going to make out of it? If I'm going to invest all this money hiring an attorney, filing a complaint, engaging in discovery, doing all the stuff that we have to do before a judge issues judgment on the case, you really need to justify that kind of investment, because these are expensive lawsuits, super expensive lawsuits. So you always want to know whether you're going to make any money. In the case of patents, damages can be based either on a licensing royalty or it could be based on lost sales. In the case of trademarks, again, lost sales, defendant's profits, there are various formulas that are used. In the case of copyrights, you don't even have to sell your work to get damages if you have filed your copyright certificate, your copyright with the U.S. Copyright Office and have received a certificate. There is no requirement of sale, unlike trademarks and patents, where you have all these selling formulas to decide the damages. And I'm really simplifying things for purposes of this show. But in the case of copyrights, there is something called statutory damages. By statute, the legislature of the United States has ordered that if somebody steals your copyright, you get a minimum amount of damage and a maximum amount of damage. And right now, if you can show that that person who copied you was such a bad person, he really engaged in bad faith, he knew you owned the copyright, he knew that you were the author, and he copied you anyway, okay? Then you get what's called statutory damages. It's almost like punitive, but there is no such thing as punitive damages in copyright law per se. So you can get a large amount of money. And if memory serves me correctly, at one point that was $150,000, and I believe it's gone up to $250,000. So think about it. For every infringement that the defendant has engaged in, even though your poem or your script is sitting in your drawer in your bedroom or in a box under the mattress, if somebody steals your copyrighted work, they could pay you a heck of a lot of money, especially if the judge feels or the jury feels particularly generous that day, and they decide that, you know, every time a particular movie aired, it is a separate infringement. Well, think about it. If every time a movie airs in a period of 1 month, which is 3 times a day, and each one of those is an infringement, and it's $250,000 at the end of the month, you're going to have a hell of a lot of money.
So
there's your carrot.
Right.
That's a great carrot, but I mean, where do you even begin with this? So first of all, you have a script. Someone stole your script, but they didn't steal your script. They took the generic idea out of it. and then created their own thing,
Which goes back to what I was asking.
which goes back to what she was asking, what kind of a leg do you stand on then?
Ideas are not protectable.
Well,
and
there
we
you
said
go.
that the same thing. So, in order for you to be able to show copyright infringement, the first thing you have to show is that you are, in fact, the author of the work that is represented by the copyright. So, if you have a song and you are the author, you have to show that you're the author. And usually, how that happens is, usually you have, let's say, you're a poet, right? And you have a diary or a notebook where you've written it in, or it's on your computer. Especially now with the advent of computers, drafts and redrafts are all stored on computer. So if you can show that you are in fact the author, that you worked on it, and it used to be, people used to think that they can write a poem or they can write a script and mail it to themselves.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, there's all kinds of theories on the street. Is that a good thing? They call it the poor man's copyright.
That's right.
Okay, that's not a copyright.
That's it, guys.
That's
Forget
not a
it.
copyright.
Save your
No,
stamp.
No. Let me just be clear here.
Okay.
There is value to that. And the value is, if you're the original author and you take your work and you put it in an envelope and you stamp it and you bring it to the post office and it gets stamped, there's an official stamp on that document.
That's why it's supposedly.
That's right. All that does is it
Dates
raises a presumption that you are in fact the author of the work.
And it dates it, officially
And it dates it, correct.
Right.
And so when you open it in court in front of the judge or in front of witnesses, you say, I actually completed this work January 2nd, 2015. And there's a stamp on the darn thing, right? And it says January 5, 2015. And they open it and they take out that work. Well, guess what? It's the work. So it's more
there you
likely
go.
than not that you are in fact the author. That's the value of that document. I wouldn't discount it, but I wouldn't say to you that that's the only thing you have to do.
Right.
In order for you to be able to enforce the work in that particular envelope that was opened in court, it must be registered. You can't go into a courthouse without having that copyright certificate. And you can't get statutory damages. There was a really good case way back where there was an artist and they had painted a poster and the poster had just sat there, and some guy, director, whatever it was, they decided that they're going to do some home decorating, and the set, just like we're sitting here, right in the back, had the portrait of this teenager,
Okay.
who somehow had figured out enough to go ahead and copyright it. Every time that episode aired and that camera went on that particular portrait that was painted by this author, that was an infringement. And because the filmmakers, the directors, are considered experts in the area of copyright, heck, they have to protect their film, right?
Right.
The judge and jury came back and said that infringement was willful. So every time that episode would wrap, I can't tell you how much money that person made.
Wow.
Because they had enough presence of mind to go ahead and file the copyright with the Copyright Office and secure a certificate.
Well, so
now let me go back to the question
yeah.
that Michelle asked. How do you know they're infringing? Like I said, there are 3 elements that have to be shown in order for you to prevail in copyright infringement. A, you're the author. So, poor man's copyright shows you're the author. B, you have to show that your work was accessible to the infringer. Okay? Either you sent it to him,
Right.
soliciting his, and here's where a lot of people get into a lot of trouble. They trust people. And unfortunately, I'm a lawyer, I'm a cynic, and I hate it, and I never was this way. But now I always tell people, you need to create the paper trail to prove that you sent it to this person. If you don't, how are you going to prove that in a court of law? You have to have the paperwork in place.
Right.
He's not going to admit it. There's no way in heck he's going to admit it. But if you have an email, and the email says, I'm sending you my script, attached is the script, please keep it confidential. If I don't hear from you, I presume you're going to keep it confidential. And the script is being sent to you for the sole purpose of evaluating it and telling me that the script is good or bad. And then 6 months later, the guy has copied it, never responded to you. Now you have an email or a letter with an express mail stamp, something that shows they signed for it on the other side. See, emails are great because emails leave signatures. And by the way, people, even if you delete it, we'll find it. Okay? There's ways of getting on those hard drives, and we can find it.
Wow.
Okay? So, electronic communications today, very, very important. There are rules in federal court. I'm not aware of state court, because I do all federal
You do
court.
federal, right?
I do primarily federal patents, trademarks, copyrights are patents and copyrights are in fact exclusively in the jurisdiction of the federal courts. We can get it. So don't think, defendants, that you can delete the emails and we're not going to find them, because we will.
You will.
Okay? But if you choose to send something by mail, always use certified mail.
Sure.
Always have your receipt. Send it express. I like sending them express mail, because express mail is actually one of the few types of mail that are recognized by the U.S. government. When you file, it used to be when you file things in the patent office, the only overnight mail service they recognized was the United States Post Office express mail package. And you always ask for signature. Always. Delivered tomorrow, there's a tracking number, sign for it. Lay the paper trail in place so that you can show that the other side had access. Now, that's one way of looking at it, if you keep your work secret. On the other hand, if you have a book and the book is distributed all over the place, and you can show that the books are in the library, the books are at Barnes & Noble, they're at, Dalton's bookstores, they're at, Hudson News as you're traveling from one airport to the other. If you can show that your work is so widely distributed into the public, where anyone who's interested can just pick it up and read it, you don't have to show that paper trail that you sent it to them. It is presumed, by virtue of the fact that it's so publicly available, that there is access to the work.
Wow.
So that's element number 2.
So-
Element number 3, okay, for infringement. You put the works right next to each other. And you read one and you read the other, literally paragraph by paragraph. It is by far the most difficult analysis to do. And as you read it, you note the similarities and you note the differences.
So it doesn't have to be word for word. It's not
No,
like
no,
I
no,
stole
no.
the script. It can be that they made changes enough.
The differences count less than the similarities. So they may have 15 differences and 3 similarities. But as I'm reading my script and as I'm reading the other script, if the artistic impression that pops off the pages is that I'm reading the same script with minor changes here and there, you're dead in the water. Infringement. Mm-hmm. Copyrights are really funny because they really only protect the artistic impression. And to quote Sandra Day O'Connor in a very famous case that involved yellow books out in the state of Oregon, the Feist case, she said, when a work even has a modicum of artistic expression, then it's protected under the Copyright Office, under the copyright laws of the United States. What is a modicum? I have no idea. Nobody
A slight
does.
or a modicum.
Modicum.
A small
But
concept, yeah.
Some courts have gone so far to apply this concept of pornography, right? What's beauty to one person may be pornographic to somebody else. So pornography, you know it when you see it. Okay?
Oh, brother, this is one can of worms.
So modicum of artistic merit. You may think this has a modicum of artistic merit, but I may think it doesn't.
It's kind of subjective, isn't it?
Totally
It's
subjective.
sure.
And that is why there's no rhyme and reason. There's no fixed rules, and the court decides these cases literally on a case-by-case basis.
Let me ask you a question. I hate to open this can of worms. We're not even going to go that can of worms yet, because that and it's a whole show itself. Let's suppose I'm writing with someone, and the two of us are writing on the phone. And so you got writer on the computer, and then you have conceptor on the phone. Okay, they get into an argument. Who owns it what? I'm under the impression the actual author owns it, whose equipment it was created on, not the conceptor? Or is it the conceptor that owns it, and that author was at hire, the typer was at hire, and where would you go with that?
I would argue that both do.
Both do.
Both do. It really depends on the process. But, if we take your hypothetical to the extreme, okay, if you have the concept and you're writing on a computer, and the computer is basically the means by which the concept is traveling from your head to the screen on the computer, does that make the computer the co-author of the work? I don't think so.
No.
Because really you're just hitting, all the ideas, the whole, the entry, the middle, the theme, everything that goes to make up that script is all in your head. The two people who are collaborating, this one has the idea, this one's on the phone, you're in an office, you're going back and forth, there's probably a tremendous amount of communication. And it's probably the collaboration of the two that ultimately leads to the final work.
That's right.
So they're both co-authors, and they're both co-owners.
The person who's at the computer has proof that they wrote it because it's on their computer. What proof does the person who's on the phone have? Phone records?
I hope he has an email both before and after. We're having a conversation on such and such a day to continue working on that script together.
Wow, that's a good,
okay?
very good point for the filmmakers now.
So what you really should not be doing is being on the phone and working on a script together with somebody, because that will make it very difficult for you to prove.
Unless you send an email, then you have a
Right.
record.
Right. And if that person never denies that email is good evidence that it's more likely than not. It's not absolute evidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, as is required in criminal cases. But in a civil case, all you have to do is show it is more likely than not that he was a co-author rather than he is.
Got it.
Okay? Because the burden of proof is very different in a civil case than it is in a criminal case. And so all you want to do is you want to, in a regular course of business, get into the habit of confirming things by email, sending letters, communications. Let's say you are on the phone and you're in the state of New York where you can actually tape a conversation so long as one of the two people gives approval for that taping of that conversation. So tape the conversation to show that you were on the phone, and as a matter of fact, during that conversation, you were providing creative and collaborative effort. You were engaged in creative and collaborative effort with your co-author to create this. There's a lot of different ways. See, if we're going to say what are co-authors, how do you define co-authors? You define co-authors as being the originators of the work. They both this work over here, this script, is the result of these two individuals. It originates from them. It is original to them. Because in the spoken language, the word original has a totally different meaning. In copyright law, the word original or originates from means it comes from them. They are the author. They are the creator. So these two people are co-authors. Now, the question of if I'm on the phone is a question of proof.
Right.
How do I prove that I was on the phone while I was working with this individual when we were creating this work? It's a question of proof, not a question of
Would there be
definition.
phone records to
Right.
show that I spoke with this one here, and you could see on a phone record the phone number?
Sure, but who goes out and gets phone records? In the case of cell phones, it's easy. Skype is even better because they actually track every conversation you've ever had. The more knowledgeable you become with the technology around you,
Sure.
the more likely you will know. And a good litigating attorney knows where to go find them.
Let's sum this up for the filmmakers. So far, we know that when you work on a script, you have to take necessary steps to make sure that it's yours by filing it with the Copyright Office. Probably a good idea to mail it to yourself anyway for a date. And then you want to make sure that it is yours and you've got all this that proves that it's yours.
Right.
The machinery, the paper trail, everything you've done. If you're working with someone, then you have to show the collaborative effort.
That's correct.
You have to be able to prove the collaborative effort.
That's correct.
If in fact you guys get into an argument, you're not speaking with each other anymore, and unfortunately it comes to blows in a courthouse on who does what. Before we go any further, very important, Betty, to get in touch with you, any filmmaker or writer, it's intellectual law. Give me your website again.
Sure. Our website is www.intellectuallaw.com, and that's spelled INTELLECTULAW.com. Or you can just search my name, Betty Tufariello, Tufariello. It will come right up. And you can even do copyright attorneys on Long Island. We're there.
And you're going to come right up.
And we're
Okay,
gonna
that's
come right
important.
up.
I didn't want the show to go past us without some form of a way, because I know this type of show, not only will you be back on our show, but I'm going to wind up getting a lot of questions and answers from them. So real quick, I want to bring Violet on, and I want to just get a real quick update on Big Sky. So Violet, come on up here a second. And just a quick sit down, and I 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just give us a quick sit down. What's going on with the Big Sky, folks?
Everything is going on with Big Sky. We're moving forward. We're working on a sizzle. And as the tour director, the international tour director, I've been all over the country, and I'm headed to Canada soon. But the next stop is Cherokee. We have a very big turnout for that, and a lot of events going on at Cherokee, 3-day. So there's a lot on the calendar happening. We're moving forward, and
If people wanna follow Big Sky, how do they do that? Let's get that right out there to the public.
Okay, BigSkyTV.com.
And they can get their questions answered,
Yeah.
do what they have to do. That's wonderful. So I want to say thank you to you, Betty, but you will be back. And Violet, of course, your new show is coming up on Madhouse TV. We're looking forward to that as soon as that happens. And Michelle, come on in here back quick. And I want to say good night to everybody on behalf of Michelle Parisi, my wife, who is now the co-host of our show. We're in our second season. Betty, thank you for shedding some light on a very intricate subject. And from us here at Madhouse TV, I want to say thank you to Cheryl Dobbins, Violet Anna Licari, Janine Zerilli, Vicky Mealy, Tom Mealy, Tommy Marr, for putting this show on. Guys, without you, we couldn't have a show or a network. Thanks again, Betty. And we'll see you next week right here on The Filmmakers Show.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ta.